welcome back. The Vooch era has begun in Boston. The Jays and Confused podcast. I'm Jeremiah Broderick. As always, Matt Mislinski is joining me. We are recording on Saturday, just after the trade deadline and after the Celtics' miraculous comeback versus the Miami Heat. Matt, what stood out to you most about that game?
About that game. I mean, the Celtics dug themselves into a pretty deep hole. I think one of the things that stood out to me was the historically bad three-point shooting in the first half. Celtics going 1 of 20 for a whopping 5% from three. Went into the half down, I believe, 21 or so. So what stood out to me was their ability to come back from that. And I texted you in the first half, like, I'm not worried the threes are going to fall eventually. That
Did
second
you not
half.
get worried at some point?
No. I'm gonna be
Yeah,
honest. This might be
it
like
was a 2-point win.
Yeah. I was more worried in that final 5 minutes when it was like kind of back and forth. There were a lot of lead changes late, but I was never worried when we were down by 20 at halftime. Just because I was like, it's such an abnormality that 3-point shooting in the first half. We did end up going 9 of 16 in the second half, so over 50%. So the shots did balance out. Didn't end the game with a great percentage overall, but I wasn't worried. I figured the offense would kind of find its way eventually. I thought defensively, we were giving up there were quite a few like missed rotations. We were giving up a lot of threes, but I mean, for the most part, it felt like just an off night, especially trying to incorporate Vucevic. You could kind of tell in that first half we were kind of struggling, and he got a fair amount of minutes in his first start, and a lot of it felt like was just trying to figure out like where to get him the ball, what kind of shots he was looking for, how he could kind of incorporate himself into the flow of the offense. And by the fourth quarter, certainly, it felt like we had kind of figured out what we were going to be doing. So yeah, I think like that's about as he ended up with, I think, like 11, 12, and 4. Like, it's as successful of a debut for a backup or slash like fringe starting center that you can ask for.
Yeah, I thought Vooch played solid throughout this, especially for this being his first game. A lot of people talking before the game about how he had really only had a shoot around and wasn't totally in like the system yet or didn't know all the verbiage. It was a
Yeah.
good sign to me the amount of like talking that was going on the court. He seemed to be asking like Peyton Pritchard and Jaylen Brown a lot of questions, like on this look, where do you want me to be? On this read, when do I switch? That sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I have faith that he'll like incorporate himself. If I'm being honest, I was worried in the first half of this game.
Nah.
Well, here's the thing: we should beat this Miami Heat team. This is
Yeah.
not like an overpowered Miami Heat squad. And maybe it just says something about like what my expectations are this season, that coming into this year, I would probably have projected us like close to this Miami Heat team. Like, they have Norman Powell, they have Tyler Hero, they have Bam Adebayo. Like, they have a few guys, but
Yeah.
just given how both teams have played through the first like half 60% of the season, this shouldn't be like a tough win. And yeah, the shooting's gonna come and go, but it also just didn't seem like our energy was there in the first half. They were a much more aggressive team on defense. This wasn't a great Jaylen Brown game. He came away with 7 turnovers. A few of those were him trying to throw post passes into Vooch when Vooch had those seals on guards that were just like kind of lazy. And it's been a while since we've had like a post threat where he's needed to throw in back into the post passes. So like I can kind of get it, but there were a few signs that this was not really our game in the first half. And that third quarter run was really interesting how we got back into it because there was no Jaylen Brown out there.
Yeah.
On the Miami Heat side, they had no Norm Powell and no Bam Adebayo that third quarter. So it was like we both mutually said we're going to bench our stars for the third quarter. And it was kind of our role players that got us back into it. Derek White got hot from 3. But I don't know. I'm glad we won. The fourth quarter execution was there, but it wasn't a clean win.
Yeah, and I will say, like, the three-pointers I figured would start to fall eventually. What was a little bit more concerning was it seemed like we were in absolute mud trying to like get past the 3-point line on offense. Miami is like a solid defensive team, but by no means do I feel like they're the toughest defensive team we've gone up against. And it felt like we could not penetrate at all. And I don't know if that goes kind of along with what you were saying about energy, but it was just brutal watching us like kind of hot potato it around the 3-point line. And anytime someone tried to drive in, like they needed a screen. And if somebody kind of like hopped under the screen and just cut off their path, like we could not cut through in the way that we have against kind of better teams, more stout perimeter defensive teams. So I don't know what was going on last night, especially coming off that very impressive win against Houston, who had a lot of size and a lot of physicality. We just could not make any progress. And I think that was more frustrating. Like the threes, again, you're like, at some point those are going to fall. But it was really weird just watching them like just not able to get past a single defender. And like that comeback, a lot of it was Peyton Pritchard kind of putting the game on his shoulders, getting inside. He was one of the few guys that I thought was able to like blow by defenders, was able to create some dribble penetration. But yeah, I thought that was a sign of maybe just everybody's tired. Maybe there's like just an energy thing. Maybe it could have been like a little bit of we're rocked back a little bit. We had 4 guys with Anthony Simons just like leave the team and trying to figure that out. But yeah, it definitely felt like there was something missing that I don't know that I've seen that many times this season, where we're just kind of stuck on offense.
Yeah, Peyton Pritchard was kind of the only guy who could get 2 feet in the paint, which once we figured that out, we kind of just spammed Peyton Pritchard side pick and roll into the paint and something good would come out of it. What did you make of the Jordan Walsh benching in this game? Because it's very rare for us to have a game where the other team's young wings are just more energizing than us. Like, this was a pretty good Baylor game. Ugo was the only plus in the first half.
Yep.
So he
Which
did
down
some good
21,
things.
Like
Crazy. He ended as a minus though, overall, which is rare for him. So it felt like we needed energy from like our sort of band of young wings that we weren't getting, and Jordan Walsh has kind of been that guy all season. So do you think that's something that's going to keep happening going forward now that we have Vooch, or is he a guy you kind of need to make space for in the lineup?
Vooch or Walsh?
Walsh.
I think Walsh should have played in that game. I believe I texted you, like, right now we're missing Walsh, and you were like, yeah, and we need more Ugo, and I thought both of those points were correct. Especially in games where we're struggling to find our offense. And again, like, we did complete the comeback. It was a narrow win. It was a back and forth win, but we did get the victory in that game. It just felt like there have been a few games this season where we really couldn't figure out, like, how to get to our shots, what was working and what wasn't. And what ended up kind of turning it around was Jordan Walsh just like creating chaos, getting open, finding easy baskets. So I was surprised he didn't play. I think part of it is Baylor Shireman has kind of been showing a lot of growth recently. He's someone that I have never been particularly high on in terms of like, is he like, I've just never thought he was better than Jordan Walsh. Obviously, as a shooter, I think he's far more developed. He's a little bit more comfortable with the ball in his hands, but I just have always defaulted this season to I would rather have Jordan Walsh's energy than anything else. I thought like Sam Hauser played a lot of minutes in that game. Didn't have much to show for it in terms of scoring. He got 3 rebounds, 2 assists, but like nothing particularly impressive from Sam Hauser. Just another like when he's not shooting well, you expect him to just be solid everywhere else. And I thought for the most part, he was solid everywhere else.
He was solid. I was a little surprised Sam Hauser closed this game.
Yeah.
Just because what we've seen all season from Joe is who plays the best or who's hot that night gets the close.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like Sam Hauser played bad in this game, but he definitely wasn't hot. You know, he wasn't hitting threes. He was playing solid defense, but not like getting a ton of deflections. I thought Ugo had like a more impactful minutes per minute basis than Sam Hauser in this game, so I was a little surprised he didn't close over Sam.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. Honestly, the way Shireman played, I was a little surprised that he didn't get more time closer to the end of the game. I also think, like, one of the more interesting dynamics in this game, and something that I think we'll spend some time moving forward talking about, was Vucevic versus Keita.
Yeah.
I thought Keita didn't have his best night last night. Still, like, got 11 rebounds, was hustling every minute he was out there. But Vucevic ended up with more minutes, still more rebounds, got more points, and obviously Vucevic, I think, is a superior offensive player. Part of that, and I think Neemias Queta this offseason should spend a lot of time just working on holding on to the ball when in the paint surrounded by two or more defenders. I think that's a situation we've seen him turn the ball over so many times this season, and it happened a couple times against Miami last night. He gets a pass, and if he's got two or more defenders around him, if he tries to take a single dribble or even just like corralling that pass, like his hands are not good enough at this point. Just to trust him in those situations. So the end of the game, it was a little bit of back and forth where Keita would be in for defensive possessions, then Vucevic would come back in, and we were Joe was playing them both to see what would work. I would guess, just without having looked it up specifically, I think Vucevic probably played more of those closing minutes than Keita. So, I still think Keita should be the starting center. I like his defense a lot more. I think his chemistry with everybody else. But Vucevic showed a lot, and I think that's something that moving forward is going to be more of a conversation, whether it's matchup dependent or what. But if it depends, like, what we're trying to lean into. Is it our defensive identity? Is it our offensive identity? I think the rebounding at the big man position, like, the Celtics have quietly snuck their way into top 10 in the league in rebounding. So, like, that was an area that was a huge concern going into the season. Yeah, I believe we're ninth right now. And we've been doing that without Vucevic, who we just added, who's, like 9 to 12 rebounds a game. So I think we're good on that. It's just, how is he going to fit into our offense? And we saw that develop over the game. And what is he going to look like defensively? And thinking about Anthony Simons, who was by no means known as any kind of a defensive player and showed a lot of improvement within the organization. Curious to see if Vucevic can kind of carry on that trend. But yeah, it was an interesting game, an interesting closing lineup. And to go back to the original question, like, I just think Jordan Walsh deserves more minutes than he's getting. I understand he's cooled off offensively and he's been having some foul trouble, but this is also his first year getting real minutes. And he is one of those guys who's shown flashes of, like, let this guy play through that, because when he does, when he's not making those mistakes, like, he's a very valuable basketball player that we want to develop as part of this core.
Yeah. So to the Vooch Keita conversation, I was really impressed by Vooch in this game, especially the passing he showed, where he was able to catch it and then just like flip it to the perimeter, or just know when guys were cutting to hit them. He hit
the
Hugo
cut was great,
really pretty.
Yep.
I was wondering if he made an argument to start over Garza in that two big lineup. In Chicago this year, he's been starting at the 4 for them, and then kind of playing starting 4 and backup center, which maybe that's a role for him on this team. Like, if we're gonna put Garza at the 4 with kind of some of his defensive liabilities, I could easily see an argument for putting Vooch there when he has very similar defensive liabilities. Neither one is like as quick on their feet as you would like for a guy guarding a perimeter player. But he brings so much more on the offensive end and as a defensive rebounder that a lot of times we talk about defense with these guys as just how they move their feet. But if you can get 10 defensive rebounds a game, you're ending 10 possessions, and that's going to help almost make up for whatever liabilities you have. So I could see the argument there. I'm just curious what's going to happen when we bring this team into like more of a playoff environment, and they're start to pick on our weak links and, get Vooch or Garza out on an island and attack those guys. And that's really the scenario you need Jordan Walsh for, where he has a little bit more size, can kind of play the 4, but can switch almost 1 through 5 on defense.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that should be something that I anticipate this Celtics team going at least 2, maybe 3 rounds deep into the playoffs. Obviously, a lot of this is dependent on what happens with Jason Tatum and whether or not he comes back this season. But just thinking about Vucevic at the 4, inserted into the starting lineup, I mean, he would be taking the place of, we've been doing the 2 big lineup the last 2 games at least, with Keita and Garza. And I almost think Vucevic is an interesting one because he has much better range and just a quicker release than Garza. So he's going to be a much more useful, like, pick and pop big. He's going to be able to stretch the floor a lot better than Garza does. but he's also like a very reliable post player. We saw a little bit of that last night where he can just get the ball, 5-10 feet from the hoop and kind of work his way into a shot. And I don't know, we didn't see a lot of him and Keita together last night, so I'm curious to see how that goes, where Keita positions himself during those possessions to clear out some space for Vucevic, to give him a little bit of room to operate, knowing that like that's not Keita's strong spot. He's not a creator from inside the arc. And so it is nice to have that dimension, but trying to figure out how to work those two guys together for that offensively, I think is going to be interesting. I think having Keita as a backstop to Vucevic at the 4 does cover a lot of those liabilities. So it isn't a lineup I'm interested in seeing. I just don't know what it's going to look like exactly on the offensive end, how we're going to use them.
Yeah,
Again,
I would
that
say
4
my
spot
best
has
guess
kind of
is
been
just that
a rotation
we
all
spent
year.
the first half of the.
Speaking of which, I'm going to pour one out for our guy Josh Minot, traded to Brooklyn. Pour one out for Xavier Tillman, traded to Charlotte. Chris Boucher traded to Utah, I believe. At least 2 of those guys played some minutes this season. I'm going to miss Josh Minot the most. He had a really good run. Tough to see him go. Obviously, there wasn't a ton of space in the rotation, and we did see him feel kind of the majority of the effect of that. But we'll always have that first stretch this season of the Josh Minot lineup, and then, Josh Minot at the 5 will live forever in our hearts. So shout out to those guys.
Yeah, just before we get to trade deadline on the 2 bigs, I think we spent the first half of the season really learning how to play small in those lineups. And, Joe talked a lot about learning to crash from the corners, get back on defense while getting those offensive rebounds. And I could see this next stretch of the season being very similar, where we learn to play 2 bigs. Because when we get into the postseason, we're going to want to have both looks, depending on matchup, depending on where a series goes. So I'm not too attached to this being like a 2 big team going forward. I would actually kind of prefer it to be a starting 1 big team, and it will once Tatum comes back.
Yes.
But I think these games are kind of just to test those out. And if we're testing them out, I would like to see the Keita Vooch lineup. So trade deadline also just happened. And like you mentioned, traded 3 guys. We recorded after the Anthony Simons trade, but before the Chris Boucher, and Minot changes. If I'm being honest, I'm a little disappointed, especially in the Minot move. We've been hearing all year that there was no directive to get under the tax, and then it seemed like we traded at least one useful player to get under the tax. And, I was kind of a defender in the offseason about getting under the second apron just because of the restrictions those have. When it comes to the salary tax, that's really just financial. So I'm hearing like a lot of people kind of defend the move, but once you get within $1 million, like it's a couple $1,000,000, which I know doesn't sound like a lot, but since we just saved $300 million to make the team substantially, to lose like a rotation guy in exchange for that couple million, a little disappointing to me.
Yeah, I agree. I think like I have always been on the side of like, if ownership is going to spend billions of dollars to buy a team, they should pay to make the team good. Never a fan of ownership just being like, nah, like the fans, the team, screw all that. Like, let's save me some money. I do think, like looking at it now, it looks like Brad made the right moves getting off the guys he did last season, getting us under that second apron.
Those needed to happen.
Yes. Yeah. And looking at like, Kristaps Porzingis, good luck Golden State, hasn't really played. Drew Holiday started really well, got a little injured. Now he's back in the lineup. But yeah, I think it's tough to swallow because a lot of the defense I've been hearing of it, a lot of the defense of getting under the luxury tax is like, well, hey, if we stay under it next season, we're out of the repeater, and then we basically have a blank check. And I'm like, so are we punting 2 seasons a little bit financially? Yeah. Like if somebody becomes available this offseason, or even like, I don't know what it would take if we use our mid-level, if we use our trade exception that we got from the Anthony Simons trade.
I don't think we can use the trade. I think we can use the mid-level, but if we use that trade exception, we're back over the tax. So
Yeah.
then the question is, why are we going out to try to get these giant trade exceptions and then never use them? I saw the interview with Brad before this game where he said, we'll keep an eye out and if something great shows up, which seemed to be like if like a great guy becomes available for not that much over the next year, then we have an opportunity to get him. But we're not committed to, using that. Like we're comfortable with this team being the team going forward. And that's not a terrible thing. Like this is a solid core we have. But yeah, Josh Mina was 22. And if, this trade deadline had come 6 weeks earlier, it's probably Baylor Shireman that we cut. Like those guys were very fluid in like who was more important than who in that young wing core. So kind of giving up on these guys at such a young age when they are like fluctuating and going through dry spells and then getting really good for a month and then really bad for a month. You don't like totally know who's going to be the guy going forward. I would just rather keep those guys than not,
Yeah.
which is
No,
kind
you're
of an
not
obvious take, but
you're not wrong. It is just the way you phrased it. It did. I had like an involuntary flashback to RJ Hunter versus James Young and how many arguments we had about the 15th spot on the roster that
this
never
is
mattered.
different, okay?
No, I get it. 100%. I'm with you. And like, I think Brooklyn made a great move by accepting that. I hope that they continue to develop him. I think Josh Minot can have a long and productive NBA career. And I think he may very well be like, what's his name? Aaron Nesmith going to Indiana when we just didn't have playing time for him and being very productive there. And we might slap ourselves for that at some point. But no, I wish him the best. I think Brooklyn should be building up young guys exactly like Josh Minot. If, again, I had a preference for him, for Jordan Wall. I like the energy guys more than kind of the polished shooters. So I would have rather traded Shireman, but especially because I think Shireman's older, right? Because he was a multiple year college player. Yeah.
He's like three or 4 years older than Minot.
Yeah. And, maybe if Minot had like found a smoother shooting stroke, maybe he would have stayed. Obviously, he had a little bit of a
over
wonky shot.
40%.
That's what I'm saying.
Shooting
Like,
40% for his career.
did we trade him just because it looked wonky? Like, I don't know.
It was
But
a slow shot. Like there's
yeah,
holes in his game, but
100%. But like Josh Minot, if he gets in the gym all summer, might be able to shoot as well as Baylor Shireman. I don't think Baylor Shireman can jump like Josh.
I don't
Like, I
know
think
about that, but we're
I don't
getting a
know.
little
I'm
crazy
just
here.
Yeah, I'm feeling. Listen, I'm emotional. Okay, this was a loss for me. No, and I mean Xavier Tillman was a great locker room guy, so losing him, I'm sure, has some impact on the guys. I know his kids were starting to be friends with everybody else's kids on the team, and obviously it felt like he was a big part of the culture.
Can we recheck in on some like body language doctoring we were doing early on in the season? Because I remember after every game, during huddles, Joe would just like lose his shit at Josh Minot and like scream at him. And the announcers and us and like kind of everybody who talks about this team was like, well, he's screaming at Josh Minot
Because he
because
cares.
of how much he loves Josh Minot.
Yeah.
And maybe looking back, maybe he was really angry at Josh Minot because he was really angry at Josh Minot. Maybe
That
is
doesn't
that
track
a
for
theory
me.
that holds up?
I don't know about
They,
all that.
when he kept yelling at the one guy, then benched him, then traded him. Maybe it was because he was making mistakes, not because this was like some secret language the two of them had.
So this does sound like something that the fake news media would come up with. No, I mean, it's possible. I think Joe has shown that a little bit. We've seen earlier this year, like, he yells a lot at Ugo and has had, like,
He's
Ugo on
kind
a
of
pretty
stopped,
short
though.
leash. Yeah.
And Ugo's gotten more minutes. So I think yelling from Joe might just be a bad sign, actually.
Yeah. No, I mean it's tough. We started this conversation talking about Jordan Walsh, and like I hope Joe Mazzulla finds reasons not to yell at Jordan Walsh. Like I want to see him back in the lineup. I believe that he will be like a core role player for years to come, and so I want to see him getting more reps, more NBA experience. And it's just tough. Like, Sam Hauser played 35 minutes in that game. Again, didn't shoot particularly well, ended as a +3 for the game. I just feel like 10 of those minutes could have gone to Jordan Walsh, and I don't think anything would have fallen apart dramatically. And if anything, like I think he provides an energy boost that could have shifted the tide a little bit earlier, given us more momentum, helped our over reliance on the three in that first half when we were 1 of 20. Yeah, Especially now in other news for the Celtics, we converted Amari Williams, gave him an official NBA contract, so he's no longer a two-way player. 2 years, 2.67 million. That's a steal at twice the price. I assume that we're going to be doing the same thing with Ron Harper soon, so that we can stay under that luxury tax. I think the Celtics will be juggling some 10-day contracts until we can get far enough in the season where we can sign a guy to fill the minimum required NBA spots. We have 2 weeks to get under that. I think for these 2 weeks we'll be fine. After that, I think we'll sign some 10 days and then maybe find like a minimum guy on the buyout market just to stay under that luxury tax. Again, it's going to be, I will be disappointed if like our moves are Nikola Vucevic signs for 3 years at the mid-level in the off season. We extend Keita, we extend whoever else we need to, and then we're kind of set. Like, obviously, we're bringing Jason Tatum back onto this team, whether it's going to be this season or in the offseason going into next season. But
You'd be
yeah,
disappointed if that's all we do?
a
Because I
little
think
bit.
I'm going to tell you something that might start
I
getting
think that's what I
disappointed
think
now.
that's what we're gonna
'Cause,
do. Yeah.
well, I think if you look at just the roster spots we have right now, we got 13. We have 12 guys on contract, 3 open spots. One of those is going to be a Ron Harper Jr. Then next season we have those 13 guys under contract. So there's going to be 2 open spots. We got 3 draft picks. So 2 of those guys are going to take roster spots. The other one's going to be a two-way.
I don't think we should use those draft
That's
picks. I
kind
don't
of
think we
full.
should use both of those drafts.
We're at least going to use our first rounder and then probably get another guy either on part of our mid-level or on a minimum. And I think part of the thing with Jordan Walsh and Josh Minot is like a flex from Brad almost, where he's like, if those guys had had that early season with the Nets, they would just keep trying to develop them. But I feel like we have such a confidence in our front office and in our scouting that we're like, yeah, we can find these guys. Like, we don't have a problem. Like, because of the amount of success, like signing Minot and Garza, drafting Baylor, Ugo, and Walsh, like, Brad really hasn't had a miss, even on a minimum so far.
Yeah.
So I think he's just confident that
Chris
if
Boucher. That was his. If Chris Boucher is the worst miss you have, like, you're doing fine as a GM.
Yeah, and some of it's come out since the Chris Boucher trade, where it seemed like he just didn't want to play center, was his biggest thing. Like, he's always been kind of more of like a 4, and we brought him in to play a center role, or a backup center role, and that doesn't fit with his skill set and doesn't really fit with how he wants to play. So I think he could have some run with another team.
Yeah,
But
Utah
if
is
that's your
famously
biggest
lacking
myth,
for big men.
he's going to be a 2 guard for
in Utah.
in Utah. He might run point for them.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, I mean, listen, like, I think part of it is also we have so much depth at this point. Obviously, we went into this season and the tagline was like, this is a gap year. It's Jaylen Brown and a bunch of nobodies. I think we've confidently at this point proven that narrative wrong. I'm holding on to the 2 seed now after the Knicks got mollywopped by the Pistons last night. So I'm grateful for how much depth and how much versatility we have all over the board. I think at this point we have a very solid, like, 3-headed front court with Garza and Keita and Vucevic, and we can play different styles with those guys, and we can lean into a defensive identity. We can develop an offensive identity through them with Vucevic's post abilities. I think we have obviously like a plethora of talented wings, whether it's like the stability of Sam Hauser and you know what you're getting, or the kind of excited, chaotic, like, let's see what happens with Walsh and Ugo and Baylor Shireman kind of developing into that like 2-3 who can do a little bit of everything. We have a lot there. Obviously, we have our core guys, our stars with Derek White and Peyton Pritchard and Jaylen Brown all showing out this year, even if, you know, for White and Pritchard, their shooting percentages aren't great. Like, it's not necessarily that we need to make a big move, especially like with Jason Tatum coming back, who's going to add some more rebounding, some more defense, some more passing, some more scoring, some more everything, frankly, along with size. But it feels like, so we just saw Ayu Dosunmu, who we had talked about a lot as like a guy I loved as like a backup point guard after we made the Anthony Simons trade. He got traded for like 3 or 4 second round picks. And we have a first round pick this year. If I were to say, let's use our first round pick, attach it to, let's say, Baylor or whoever, and see what we can get at the backup point guard position. I think the thing about getting under the luxury tax is like, let's say we're using the mid level for Vucevic. Can the mid level be split up or no?
I believe it can, yeah.
Okay. So I'm like, it's Baylor's salary, that first round pick, and whatever portion of the mid level we can get left. Let's say we sign Vooch to like a 3 for 30 or something like that. And we go get like, I feel limited in the backup point guard that we can get for that by the notion that like it's gonna have to, whoever it is gonna have to keep us under the salary cap. And I think that's what's the most frustrating for me. And it might just be that Tatum comes back and we move everything around and Peyton Pritchard is our backup point guard again. And I wouldn't be mad at that, but it does feel a little constricting. And I think it's tough to be like, yeah, next year is about staying under the luxury tax so that we can spend like crazy throughout the rest of Jalen and Jason's prime. And it's like, but we're in Jalen and Jason's prime. And I think that's the way a lot of Celtics fans are feeling of like, what do you like? This was our gap year where we don't have to spend money. Fine, we trade away half our team and we make all these financial moves that like don't feel good intuitively as a basketball team because you feel like your team is getting worse. And then to hear that we're going to be doing it next season, like even like this year we're a 2 seed. Like there are no complaints on the basketball side of the floor. It's just tough to swallow another year of like, yeah, our priority is getting under that repeater tax, getting out of that so that we can set up for the year after, and kind of like pushing it down the line when it's like Jaylen Brown's an MVP candidate this year. Jason Tatum was an MVP candidate last year. And like these guys aren't going to be MVP candidate caliber guys forever. And is centering next year around, well, let's get out of the repeater. And then, like 2 years from now, we might make a crazy move and have 3 guys on max contracts and like just run with it for a while. And I think that'll be super fun. I'm hoping that happens. But yeah, I understand like the emotional Celtics fan who's like, it sucks to be making financial moves.
This was a weird trade deadline, like across the league, even not just for Boston. But I think because of the second apron and how teams have kind of learned to adapt to the new cap situation in the league, there was some records set on this trade deadline for like number of players moved, but it wasn't an impactful trade deadline for this season.
Not
like
at all.
Apart from maybe the Harden trade, I don't know if any of these moves really affect the playoff picture. All of these moves were pretty much teams getting set for 2 to 3 years down the line.
Yeah.
And I see you laugh at the Harden move affecting the playoff
No,
picture.
no. I was laughing because I was like, you're saying Golden State isn't in contention now with Kristaps Porzingis?
I am saying that, yes. And
good.
You can
Somebody should.
But it's hard to grade any of these trades because we're not going to know the full effects of them for a few years. So the Vucevic for Anthony Simons trade, though right now, those are 2 fairly equal players. But we got one of the largest trade exceptions in the history of the league out of it. So until we know what happens with that, it's kind of hard to say if we won the trade or not. And then the same goes with a lot of other teams where they got off future contract. The Kristaps Porzingis deal, I think a lot of that was just more for the $30 million expiring contract. That they realized Kuminga didn't have a lot of trade value, and they didn't want to just have his $22 million sitting on their books for next year. Or Buddy Hield's $9 million. They didn't see that as like a super tradable contract, so they'd rather get out of all that money now and have pretty clean books as they wrap up the Steph era.
I will say, you said outside of Harden, I don't know how many of the moves. I think the Hawks had a good deadline, and right now they're obviously redeveloping their identity in real time around Jalen Johnson. I think they're a deadlier team than they were before the deadline, and they're climbing up those East standings, and I'm curious to see. I anticipate probably facing them in the playoffs at some point, and I think it's going to be a hell of a fun series.
I think they're good. Like I've said before, the Kuminga addition was a little weird just because he has so much overlap with Jalen Johnson and Ricochet that I don't know how smooth of a fit it's going to be. And we've seen in the past...
Forget Kuminga. This is about Buddy Hield.
I don't know. I thought losing Vooch Krejci was tough. I liked him as an off-the-bench guy. 6'8", point guard, shot like 42% from 3, good defender. I would rather just still have him than have Buddy Hield in that spot, even if He's a little bit better of a shooter. He's a step down defensively and a step down playmaker. So I guess I'm not super high on their moves. Kaminga is kind of the most talented guy they brought in, and he's probably destined for a bench role with them. And we've
Yeah.
kind of seen how he's dealt with bench roles in the past.
Well, that was also with a head coach who hated his guts. Yeah. We'll see.
Yeah. So we'll
I've
see
got
how they
my eye
do.
on Atlanta, but yeah. No, I hear you.
I don't think this was like a mind blowing deadline for them. Like I'm not like, oh, I gotta tune into the next Atlanta Hawks game to see how different this team's gonna be. And in past deadlines, that's been the takeaway from a lot of these trades. Is like, oh, we gotta tune into the next Lakers game to see what Luka's gonna do.
Yeah.
We gotta.
You're not
tune
watching
in.
the next Wizards game?
They're sitting where Trey and AD are sitting out for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
I might watch the first Wizards game of next year.
And then after, oh, okay. Yeah.
But that's like a year away. So it was a big trade deadline in terms of like guys moving and the futures of these teams shifting around. But in terms of like play on the court, we really don't have any like massive changes. And I think the Celtics deadline was in step with that, where we were just kind of getting ourselves set up against the cap rather than making like a huge difference in terms of play this season.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I took away from this deadline, looking around the league, one of the few moves that I thought was impactful in a playoff sense, I thought the Timberwolves made an A-plus trade getting Dosunmu. They've been looking for point guard help all year, and I think he's going to be perfect for them. I wanted to talk about, he ended up getting traded for a bunch of second-round picks and then some salary to match. And looking around the league, Anthony Davis got traded. It was like an 8-player trade or something for 2 first-round picks. One of them is the Thunders, so
They're
a
not
30th
good
pick.
yeah.
And the 2031 Golden State Warriors, which is like, it's going to be a good pick because Steph will be out of the league most likely. And then you realize it's like top 20 protected. What is the value of a pick coming out of this deadline? It seems like the only real, you had Triple J get traded for 3 first-round picks. Desmond Bain last year got traded for 4 or 5. Like, it seems like the value of first round picks and even second round picks is kind of in flux right now, or at least it was at this deadline. I believe once the offseason starts heading into the draft, the Celtics open up either 4 or 5 tradable first round picks. 4. And we held on to our 2 first rounders that we were already able to trade. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on what the value of those are, and if you think we're going to be doing anything with those. Again, going back to, are we going to use our own pick in the draft this year, knowing that we have so much depth, that like that young core that we're building with Walsh and Ugo and Shireman and all of them?
Yeah, I mean, the value of a pick right now, we're not seeing as many like all in, here's 5 unprotected first round picks for Rudy Gobert type trades.
Yeah.
Where in the past, it seemed like picks almost became undervalued, that it was like, as soon as you feel like your team's ready, the next move is to trade all your picks into the center for that last guy. It did seem like at this deadline, picks were valued much more on what kind of player they were going to become. The Ivica Zubac trade was interesting because it was 2 firsts, one of them being the Pacers' first this year, protected 1 through 4 and 10 through 30. So if it is between 5 and 9, it goes to the Clippers, and if it's between 1 and 4, really, it stays with the Pacers. And that's one of those picks where it was really valuable, I think, to the Clippers, because they know if it is 5 through 9, they're going to get a player out of it. Like, this is a deep draft. They're going to get a guy who they can put next to Garland and Mathurin and be like, okay, we have the beginnings of a young core with these guys. Where picks that were in like the AD trade, it's like, this is going to be like an end of the draft kind of thing. So I think teams are much more interested in like getting their core players in these picks. And I think that's like a smart way to be. I was a little confused by Chicago's deadline just because it seemed like they kind of sold out a lot of their young players and walked away with 9 second rounders. It was originally 10 second rounders, and then they had to send one back because of Kobe White's physical. But I just don't know what you really do with 9 second rounders. Like, you're not going to draft 9 guys in the second round and then just have a roster of recent second round draft picks. So yeah, I
It
think
does feel a little
it's a little dynamic.
2K-ish, where it's like, all right, now we're going to send 6 second rounders for a first.
I mean, I think there's value in second rounders, but at a certain point, they become a little redundant, where it's good to have a second rounder each year, just because if you believe in your scouting, you can say, like, we see this guy dropping, let's take a swing on him. But especially if they're, first half, I was a little disappointed we lost the Pelicans second in this upcoming draft, because those, like, 32, 33 can be really cost controlled. But I think the cost of picks right now is like very dynamic, where it depends on where it's projected to be, and it's not so much about like the number. Where in past deadlines, I think a lot of teams have been competing to see who can get like the best Woj bomb or the best Shams drop of so and so player for 6 first rounders, 3 seconds. There's been kind of less of that. AD's trade value is just low. I think that's really what it comes down to.
So, yeah. Um, Speaking of, I want to say second round guys. I'm not actually sure. I want to take a second and talk about Ron Harper Jr.
In the skills challenge.
Yes, in the skills
Team
challenge
Harper.
and playing in the G, is it the G League exhibition, the Rising Stars.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He's all over All-Star Weekend.
he's all over All-Star Weekend, well deserved. I was looking at this. He's 6'5", 230, 235, whatever. Listed as a small forward and power forward. When he's been called up from Maine, and I heard Brad shouting him out recently as well, and Joe Mazzulla, he's been playing more of a guard role when he gets called up. He's been handling the ball a lot more. He's shown some distributing abilities. Is it bad? I'm looking at him. I figure we're gonna convert his contract into a full contract as part of our kind of salary finagling, but also it feels like he's worth an NBA contract from what I've seen of him, and we've been raving about him in the G League. I've also heard some rumors that we might convert either Max Shulga or Tony Fungi, I want to say, that we acquired from Utah in exchange for Chris Boucher. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think Ron Harper, obviously, in the Houston game, gave Kevin Durant fits? Ended up winning the Tommy Award in that game, had some nice shooting from three, just played overall really well. Do you see him finding an opportunity to crack through in this rotation, especially given Joe's kind of propensity for mixing up lineups and starting different guys on different nights?
Yeah. I think, one, Ron Harper's just been like a great story this season. And I do think out of our two-way guys, he's the most deserving of getting his contract converted. And I gotta say, I was not a big believer in Ron Harper Jr. I remember he was a big star at Rutgers, and back in college he was just a power forward. Like, there was no like, oh, he's a small forward shooting guard. No, he was like a back to the basket post
Yeah.
up threat. And the doubt with him was always 6'5" big men are great in high school and college and then usually go play overseas. Like, it's very rare for a guy who plays the big man position in college to be able to learn a new position
Yeah.
once they get to the pros. And people have been kind of shouting out Phil Pressey and like the G League coaching team we have up there in Maine, but they've done a really good job of like getting him to kind of play this combo guard role where he can initiate offense, run pick and roll, but then also like use his body and his strength off ball to like get by guys and push guys out of position. And I think it says something for kind of the role he'll be able to play in the NBA going forward, where he's just big and strong for a point guard. And we saw it in his game. Like, he was able to get like that big putback dunk and
Yeah.
kind of play physical around the rim in a way that not a lot of guys, not a lot of point guards you're calling up from the G League can do.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm pretty impressed by his development, especially over this year.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a big matchup tomorrow morning
Yeah.
around 12:30, I want to say, against the Knicks. I think, right now they hold the season tiebreaker for positioning. We're currently a game ahead of them. If we win tomorrow, I think that'll be big. both for morale in terms of like that is kind of a surging Knicks team right now.
We got
I think
blown out by
we
the Pistons
yeah,
last
we
night.
talked so poorly about them that they won like 8 or 9 straight, and then the Pistons just mopped the floor with them last night, blew them out by 30 or 40. So hopefully we can keep that trend going, crush their spirits a little bit. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing this new look Celtics. I'm looking forward to continuing to incorporate Vucevic. I want to see Ron Harper get that contract. I want him locked up for at least 2 years so that he can have some security. He went undrafted, and that would be cool for him to get a contract. But also, I'm also curious to see if Amari Williams kind of shows up at all because he's been converted. So, as I understand it, like now he signed an NBA contract. I don't think we can send him back down to the G League. So, excited to see whether or not he gets more playing time or if he's going to just be a garbage time guy or what. But no matter how it is, like we've got some really talented players on our roster. We're kind of rolling right now. I was looking at it last night, and I think like a lot of the East is on some like solid winning streaks right now. I think us and Detroit are like 8-2 in our last 10. I want to say some other teams like Cleveland has been rising pretty quickly. Sorry, the Knicks are 8-2. The Cavs are 8-2 in their last 10. Detroit's 7-3. We're 8-2. Charlotte quietly 9-1 in their last 10 games. They've kind of found something. So looking forward to seeing the rest of the season, how the playoff race shapes up, and heading into All-Star Weekend. I'm hoping we can crush the Knicks a little bit, and then have some fun with the Bulls. See our old friend Anthony Simons, and make some magic happen.
Yeah. I think it'll be a good opportunity to kind of integrate Vooch over the All-Star break too. Just get like a few practices in with the new squad.
Yeah,
But yeah, we'll talk after the Bulls game or something.
yeah,
But, thanks
sounds
for
good.
tuning in, everyone, and have a good one.